This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. There's a little place down on Mobile Bay in South Alabama within view of the Gulf of Mexico. And it's a peaceful spot. If you think about Mobile Bay, it's kind of shaped like a horseshoe. And of course, the opening of the horseshoe opens out into the Gulf. Great battles have been fought there. As a matter of fact, that's where the Admiral famously said, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." Right in that very spot. But the bay that I'm referring to is just to the east of where that famous battle took place during the Civil War. And the name of that bay is called Bon Secours. It's French. The French initially explored and settled that part of Alabama. But here's the thing. The term Bon Secours translates into English as safe harbor. I'm going to talk about another Bon Secours today. A place that you would think would offer a safe harbor, a place of protection, even a place of peace. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. I don't know about you, Brother Dave, but I tell you what, there are many times in my life when I've needed a safe harbor. I've needed someplace I could flee to, someplace I could go, you look for those places throughout life because, when you're particularly, I don't know about you, but particularly when you're a young person and you're just getting started. And let's face it, the world, it's exciting, but it's terrifying. It's terrifying at the same time because you don't even know how to pay a light bill or sewage or, and those are minor things. Not to mention having to make a monthly note on a house or rent or car, all that stuff that Mom and Dad took care of for so long, he never gave it a thought. And there were scary times early on, and not to mention the occupation I was in. I needed a safe harbor many times. I needed a place where I could kind of anchor my proverbial ship where free of any kind of, outside fear that might seep in. And today's discussion centers around some of the most vulnerable, I'd say the most vulnerable in our population, and that's unwed mothers and babies.
Oh, goodness. We're talking Ireland here, where there were homes that were run by nuns for unwed mothers, single, pregnant, young women. And until you hear what we're about to tell you, you think, well, that's probably a pretty good organization, a pretty thoughtful thing to have. They've got 18 of them in Ireland that were run between the 1920s up through the early 60s. I don't know quite how they pronounce things over there, Joe. I know it looks one way, but it's pronounced another.
Taun, Ireland. It's in Galway. Galway, yeah, County of Galway. Yeah, it's actually, and Galway's beautiful. It's on the western side where all the rugged coast are and that sort of thing. Those things that
Tuan.
Yeah, that's the little village, where this place was, Tuam. Yep.
Okay. Well, in this little village in the 70s, these guys are playing in an area and they find skeletons. You don't normally find skeletons just, hanging about, but they did. And they reported finding these skeletons near a concrete slab, and they estimated there were about 20 of them. And nothing was ever really done. It's kind of, oh, well, okay. Thanks for telling us, guys. It was a historian in 2014 who had her fill of following different stories along the way. And she does a research project on these homes and the number of children up to from birth to the age of about 3 that died in this one single unwed mother home. run by nuns between the 1920s and 1961. And she found that there were nearly 800 deaths. Nearly 800, actually 796 deaths took place between the 20s and 1961. That's 30 plus years that 800 babies died. And so she's trying to research, how would that happen? You know, what kind of care was going on? That seems like a high number. And lo and behold, she's trying to research this, Joe. And, well, she could only find burial records for one.
Wait, give me the number. I just want you to repeat that number. 796.
Out of 796 death certificates. Now, they registered the deaths. Okay, the deaths were not covered up.
Right.
You got 796 deaths with like how they died, why they died, what it was, you know, that kind of thing. But only one burial notice. Where are the graves for the 795 children that died?
Yeah.
And she's a historian. She can't find them. So they start tying together one story after another. And lo and behold, it seems like the babies, the little children up to the age of 3, might never have left the premises of the unwed mother's home.
Up to the age of what again, Dave?
3.
Did you say 3 years old?
3 years old. Yeah, that's actually the crushing number.
So you're talking about a child.
Yeah.
That is ambulatory, can walk about.
Yep.
Can talk, can feed themselves. Should be at about 3, getting into, they're right on the cusp of being toilet trained at that point in time. Some lag, some are ahead.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I have memories from being 3. I know 4, but you're right there on that cusp. And the fact that you've got babies that I think, per the study, you've got 33-week gestational age. That's the youngest, up to 3 years old.
Right.
And here's the thing about it is these, and they're called mother and child homes.
Right.
That's the way that they were referred to. And each one had a different name. This one was, in fact, the Bon Secours mother and child home.
Safe harbor.
Just imagine that term. And you particularly, because this story is close to your heart, because of your own personal experiences. But, I was born to a teenage mother. My parents got married, and there were different times back then, but you're scared and you want to be protected. These young women have something, and very young women probably have something that was occurring to them that had never happened before. They don't have any frame of reference because, if you've got a teenage mom, there's a high probability, if they're sending you to a home like this, there's a high probability they've been rejected by their family. So you talk about being scared. The only home that you've ever known, now you have a life growing within you. Oh, and by the by, your family is rejecting you. We're going to send you to this mother and child home. Sounds very bucolic, when you say that. And it's run by a particular order of nuns. And you said
the country's mostly Catholic, right?
Yeah, it's primarily a Roman Catholic country. It's the Republic of Ireland, not Northern Ireland. They occupy the same island, but Northern Ireland, where Belfast is and whatnot, that's part of the United Kingdom. This is the Republic of Ireland, and it's stringently Roman Catholic and has been for years and years. And so you've got these moms, and this place is open from the 20s until 1961.
Right.
And then they shut it down, Dave. It's 10 years later, and they're tearing the structure down. Now, that defies everything I can possibly imagine about a religious order, particularly one like the Roman Catholic Church that is so committed to life. They purport to be, at least, protecting those that are in harm's way, valuing the sanctity of life, those sorts of things. They talk about it all the time. But yet you've got one death certificate out of almost 800 bodies. Well, you've got multiple death certificates, but only one grave, rather.
Right. And that's the key. Bodies. Because I was kind of confused on the numbers, and when I saw that, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We're talking nearly 800 children that are dead. And what prompted this, investigation? And it's because there was only one burial. And again, I want to make sure we're crystal clear on this, Joe. While the nuns running the safe harbor home for unwed mothers and children, they were responsible and they took care of filing death certificates. That's why when it came right down to the research, they were able to find out 796 children died, but only one was buried. So
let me tell you about another certificate that exists, Dave.
Okay.
There is actually a burial certificate as well. And I'm wondering if what you're referring to with the one burial, I wonder if they had a burial certificate, because that's something that happens in the U.S. And also, if you have a local, if you think about a parish, a church parish, Catholic church parish, it encompasses a geographic zone. Okay. Right. So those that are part of the Catholic Church that wish to be buried on the ground, they want to be buried in consecrated earth. They want to be buried in the churchyard. And that's a graveyard. That's not a cemetery. A cemetery is an open place, is a public place. I wonder if, because this thing smacks of deception to me, because these children should have been, some of them probably should have been baptized. There should have been baptismal records. There should have been burials within a churchyard somewhere that would have been officiated by a priest. And there's no evidence of that.
Right.
That's what's so shocking about this day.
The historian, her name is Catherine Corliss. Now, she was the one, and again, it's really interesting to note, this is a historian who was trying to match up, doing research. And that's why they have an exact number of the death certificates, because they have that 796. But there was only one burial record. And I don't know what records they keep, but that was the kick was, wait a minute, you've only got records of one of these 796 deaths being buried. Where are they? And that's a legitimate question. I mean, you've got a certificate of death. There has to be some kind, I don't know rules and regs on what you do with the body in the 30s, 40s, or anything else. But, there's got to be a record. Like even today, if somebody is cremated, you have a record of that.
Dave, I've traced my family all the way back to Wales and back like during the Tudor era. And my ancestors over there on both sides, my father's side and my mother's side, are both Welsh, Morgan and Edwards. And so there are burial records for my ancestors. And that's going back to the 1500s. Wow. That are easily tracked. Now, there in America, we seem like we always have problems with courthouses burning down. But, and you lose records over here. But, with back then, the church, who has always been rather fastidious about documentation, writing things down. All you got to do is go to Trinity College and see the Book of Kells, to see those old manuscripts that the monks sat and toiled over, translating the Bible. All you have to do is bear witness to this, and you're left with a huge question. Why did they dismiss the lives of these precious little babies? So you're out and you're with a pal and you look down in the ground and you see maybe a skeletal remain protruding through the earth. You contact the local authorities. They come out, survey the area, and they believe that they have found 20 skeletons. Well, it's interesting because that discovery was made in proximity to the mother and children's home there in Tuam in Galway, Ireland. My question is, why did they never move forward? Why did they never move forward and see what else was there? Because, Dave, obviously, there was a whole lot more there.
That's why I think this was one of those open secrets generationally, where one generation knows what's going on, but they don't tell the kids. And if you don't tell the kids, as the other generation grows up and realizes they don't have to share it. I mean, that happens all the time. And when you're dealing with a close-knit community, but here they did. In the 70s, you got two guys that find, it's estimated they found 20 skeletons, Joe. 20 skeletons. And according to the Irish Times, they actually found him near a sewage tank that was operated on the site. Now, you told me, and it's very important to note, that the Safe Harbor Nun home was torn down. They evacuated. They left it in 1961, shut it down, and then they just tore it down. Gone. Don't know exact date of when they did it, but based on this story here about the guys finding skeletons, I'm pretty sure that it was already gone by then, because according to the Irish Times, a sewage tank was creating a problem, an old sewage tank, not a current one, an old sewage tank that was operated on the site in the early 20th century. Now, early meaning 1920s and up. And the minutes of the town meeting, Joe, actually reflect that on the board, one of their board meetings, they talked about the problems of this sewage thing overflowing, creating problems, smelling it, I'm sure.
Oh, so I'm sure, yeah.
They were really just dealing with the symptoms. Well, just cover it with some more dirt or something, that kind of thing. And not addressing a skeleton issue or anything else. So they know there's something over there, but hey, put the blinders on and let's keep on trucking. So it's 2014. You've got the historian who is doing research, and I don't know what her genesis was. I don't know if it was the 1970s and finding those skeletons, and it kind of, how historians think differently than the rest of us. I don't know, and it's really cool. Yeah. I admire historians because they those who fail to remember the past are doomed to repeat it.
Yep.
Historians live that, and they tell you they're so passionate because they're like, Dave, if this doesn't get out, we're going to do it again,
Right. Yep.
Anyway. And so I'm thinking that something came up and she decided to look into it because, again, these are public records. You find 796 children died, and you've got burial records for one. There's a story there. And that's what was reported in the Daily Mail, the Irish Daily Mail in 2014. Now, after it was reported, the historian really caught grief. It was pretty rough because that was a home for unwed mothers run by nuns. And she's been getting comments for the last 11 years, Joe. It wasn't just bad then. It's bad now. It was bad this past Sunday. She's still getting emails. Miss Corliss is. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can believe it.
Okay. Well, in 2014, this story gets printed, and there is a lot of hubbub. A lot of people are washing hands and saying, hey, get me away from here. But they had to find the bodies. There's got to be bodies somewhere. What happened to them? That led them to, we had these skeletons and we got that sewage thing over here. Led them to the tank. And Joe, in 2017, they decided to run a test on the tank, on the sewage tank. And I don't know if that's I'm kind of getting it messed up between a septic tank and a sewage dump. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that these are not like modern sewage areas. Okay. Like when you think of a septic tank, say you have a standalone home that is off county water and whatnot. And you have a field, they build the field in the back of the house, they put in the tank and the tank is there. And this may have predated the times in this particular area of Ireland. and the western portion of Ireland was markedly poor, particularly, back in that period of time. I mean, literally when this place started, the Irish were going through a revolution, during that period of time. And they probably didn't have what we would consider to be modern plumbing. My suspicion is that there is a area that was built subterranean, and I have visions of it being kind of a bricked area, maybe even domed, and then all of the sewage water would run into this thing. All of the solid waste and everything else that's being produced. Maybe they were counting on it kind of seeping down, like a modern field does, where things seep down, and they didn't really think about groundwater as much back then either. So you've got this sewage area, and they were probably all over the place. And all of a sudden, this thing's getting backed up now, and it's probably floating up. And you see this a lot in areas that are low-lying, where sewage fields begin to wet the ground above, and it gives off a horrible odor, as you can imagine. And this is decades worth.
Remember the first Meet the Fockers movie?
Yeah.
And at the wedding, the very first one, when they're
Meet the Parents, yeah.
Meet the Parents, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the septic tank backed up, and it flooded their yard, and it stunk. What is that smell? It's us. What do you think?
Yeah.
Because it had overrun the septic system, and then the field lines, got covered up, and that's what you end up with. I'm on a septic system, so I know the drill here. That's why I was really curious about this and what.
Well, yeah, over a period of time, though, this is going to get layered.
Yes,
and you're going to have, kind of the earth is going to begin to kind of collapse in on this thing.
Exactly,
and if it is like a brick structure that the walls have collapsed or anything like that, now you're getting into where the sediment has kind of dropped down. Because, look, I'm not trying to be grotesque here, but you're talking about human waste that is commingled with human remains, and it's kind of stacking on top of one another. So every time a toilet would flush, then that's another layer that goes on top of any kind of bodies that may be there. But I got to tell you, Dave, I've worked cases where I've had moms give birth in toilet stalls, and they flush the toilet. And the baby, of course, backs up the toilet. This happens in high schools. I've had several of those over the course of my career where I've had to go out to the high school because the baby was actually trapped in the toilet, and it wouldn't go down. And of course, this young lady that has given birth is petrified, scared, and everything else. And somebody finds her in there. Authorities come in, and they find a baby. But we're talking about kids that are up to 3 years old, Dave.
Right.
We're not talking about merely stillbirths. And the youngest child is at 33 weeks gestation, which is a rather substantial, from a developmental standpoint, it's a rather substantial baby by that point in time.
Yeah. One thing that we go ahead and need to be clear on is, as they were, the children actually had their death record that indicated how they died.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned something because you were explaining to me the difference between what we have now, a septic system, versus what was going on then. These nuns, am I wrong when I say the nuns got rid of the bodies by putting them in the septic? There's a hole that probably allowed access to this huge underground tank, and they placed these babies in that tank because they were already dead.
You don't have them standing adjacent to a commode and pulling a chain.
Right.
And the baby's going, because you're talking about, Dave, there are kids in here. And remember, we started off by talking 3 years old. Developmentally, that child is rather substantial. You're not flushing a 3-year-old child down the toilet. And you know what this made me think of? It made me think of Chris Watts. And the reason is that out there at those petroleum tanks, in that high desert area there in Colorado. You know what he did with both those little angels? He went to the two tanks, and these things, I'll never forget. I had this discussion on air because I'd never heard the term. And I was on the air with a guy that was working in the petroleum industry, and he was going through describing what these openings are on the top. And here's an interesting term, Dave. They're referred to as thief hatches. I'd never heard that term. It's a unique term, a thief hatch. And so my thought was, I know that in the Chris Watts case, the oldest child her back was scratched up post-mortem because he had jammed her down through that thief hatch, and she fell into that muck in there, that highly toxic raw petroleum muck in there. And Dave, I got to tell you, I think that the sisters had access to probably something similar to a thief hatch, and it had to be big enough so that it could actually accommodate up to a 3-year-old child. If we are to believe what the information that's coming out now, that sounds like the case. And once this can go to a really dark area, and the reason it's dark is I think about these children, and I wonder if these children, first off, were viable after birth. Were they being killed because no one was watching? Because to the church back then, perhaps, an unwed mother giving birth to a child is a grievous sin. And so that child, which is born, is a product of that and not worthy of life. Now, I don't know that happened. However, they would, let me give you a little bit more insight into this. I do know that with these mothers that would give birth in these homes, if they, and this is the way it was termed, Dave, if they repeat offended, they were sent to what was referred to as the Magdalene washerwomen, I think is what it was called. And essentially their punishment for getting pregnant once again was to be sent, and they become almost like indentured servants, where they're having to work processing laundry. And the nunneries ran multiple of these places around the country of these, I don't know if I want to call it a laundromat, but it's where people would go and have their clothes cleaned. And so these women would occupy these spaces. And of course, they were being lorded over by the nuns that were put in charge of it. So, the whole thing, I can understand why these people are attacking this author. I mean, this historian, because they're looking into the eyes of something that is pure evil here that took place in their community. And Dave, this place was shut down in 1961, bro. There's still people that are out there that have memories of this place.
Yeah, and knew what was going on, or at least knew there were young women there that, having children. Again, going back to the recovery process, we're talking 10, 11 years after the place is closed down. You got skeletons that are being found, being pushed to the side. And then all these years later, we're not talking, you're talking 10, 15 years after it's closed down. There's a hint that there's something going on, but they covered that up. So now flash forward all these years, decades. It's 2014 when the historian, to be honest with you, Joe, this is a pretty simple thing. How many people died there? We got death records.
Yeah.
How many people are buried? Where's the cemetery? And you don't have it. So it's so sad that it came down to that.
Yeah, it is. And you've got, listen, in this, also involved in this, it's not just the nuns, the local priest, whoever the rector was of that particular parish that this thing was assigned to. And I'm sure that it had a connected parish, because what would happen is that the priest from that parish would come to that location and conduct mass on site. Okay. Any kind of spiritual needs, confession, anything that was going to happen, and of course they're trying to, quote unquote, get these women on the right path. They're going to have to hear confession. They're going to have Bible lessons and everything else that comes along with that. The priest is involved. That would mean the bishop would also have to have knowledge of it as well, because it's part of the diocese. And you know who else is involved? The people that are the local politicians, and these are signed death certificates, Dave. That means that there were physicians out there. There were physicians out there that were listing, and these are very specific causes of death. You've got things like diphtheria, which is a horrible, kind of airway disruption. You've got bronchitis. These are the causes of death. Pneumonia. I saw one that was like a tuberculosis. So you've got a whole variety of these kids that are dying from things that in today's day and age are survivable, I think. But were they ill-equipped? Could they not? I mean, because there were people that survived pneumonia back then. There were kids that survived. There were kids that survived diphtheria. I mean, it has a high mortality rate. But you've got all of these people kind of, for lack of a better term, cloistered in this particular area, and they're there and they're all dying. I guess my question as a death investigator is what we're hearing that's listed as the cause of death officially, was it something else? Maybe something much more sinister. So authorities have these old records going back to the 70s of when skeletons are discovered. Dave, when they started to do the testing around this area based upon this, they were in for quite the shock, weren't they?
Well, I'm really curious, Joe, because what we, in looking at how it turned about in 2014, we've got the death certificates, but no burials. We already had the history of the skeletons, but now, as they start looking, this historian is really pushing. Ms. Corliss is pushing for something's got to be done.
Yeah.
And 3 years after the article is printed, 3 years, they actually go and look in the septic tank. Well, I'll call a septic tank. It was the septic system used by that nunnery, the home. And because they knew where it was, even though it had been abandoned from that building, it was still in the ground. The building might have been raised, but this was still in the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they went out and did testing. Now, the testing happened 8 years ago, 2017. Right.
Yep.
And they came up with results. And I really don't know how this, could happen, because, Joe, when I'm thinking of digging down into the earth to get core samples, to determine age and things like that. I mean, they send a pipe down there. We've got an area that appears to possibly be a tomb of a mass grave.
Yes.
It is underground. We know that it is commingled, probably.
Yep.
How are you going to get a sample? How do you go about doing that?
Well, the first thing is you're not going to put shovel to earth at this point. My suspicion is that they, you talked about, like, from a geological standpoint, how people will do core samples of the earth, and that brings out like a solid piece of earth, that's it's stratified, when you look at it. It's not what they're going to do here, because this is a surface. Yeah, it's a septic tank, but in the whole grand scheme of things, this is a surface burial. All right. So what they're going to do is they're going to put in the ground, they're going to put methane probes. And the methane probes sniff out, obviously, methane. And methane is an element that is found in the process of decomposition. Okay. As a matter of fact, the body, a human body, when a body swells, for instance, the primary gas that it's giving off is methane. I have actually seen, I've stated this before, I've actually seen a 10 gauge needle inserted into the stomach of a bloated deceased person, and a lighter struck over the end of the needle, and it gives off a blue flame, and that's the methane burning off. It's real. It's a real thing. So once they start to get hits, if they're using methane probes, that's when, in a very small section, you don't you don't bring in a backhoe. All right. You're going to now, as delicately as possible, take it down layer by layer by layer. And I would imagine if they still have the notes from where the skeletons were found, they might start there as the outer boundary and then move back into where they knew that septic tank was located. And they would start off, very surface. And once they get a hit on those first few skeletons, then the real work is at hand. And Dave, I got to tell you, because this story is occurring in real time as you and I are chatting right now. That's one of the reasons I wanted to cover it, because I couldn't believe what I was reading when I read it. And I knew that you would certainly be interested in this. This is going on right now. And Dave, I got to tell you, these commingled remains, I'm so glad you used that word, by the way. I feel like I've taught you.
You have taught me well.
You've learned the term commingle. And so just imagine, let's just say the idea that I have, if they're dropping baby skeletons in through a thief hatch or some kind of access point like this, not flushing them down the toilet, then you've got one centralized area of impact. Okay. Like maybe you've got a stillbirth or another child that dies in, I don't know, let's say January of 1922, plop. Well, there's another one that happens in February of 23, plop, like this, and they're just dropping in that one spot. If there's one central deposition area in that space, I have to think, because I can't imagine a nun walking down through some rusty door in her habit and depositing these bodies in a sewer. It just seems to me more logical that they would have access from above and drop them in there. And no one's going to be any the wiser. No one's going to question a nun. And they didn't back during that period of time.
Simple math.
Yeah.
If you look at it, they shut it down in 1961. We know that it was roughly opened up in the 1920s. So let's just say 40 years. Okay.
Yeah.
In a 40-year period of time, to have 800 bodies, that's going to be one every other week.
Yeah.
And so you're right. If they're putting them in the same area, and it's a large enough pre-septic system, sewage system, where it's interesting that it would fit that they would basically be in that area. Now, one thing that did catch my attention, Joe, is that in 2017, I was wondering how they did the excavation when you were talking about using a methane before they put shovel to ground, right? Which didn't occur to me. But they did a test excavation after they had results.
Yeah.
And that was, so in 2017, they knew, okay, we have found what we're looking for, but they stopped. And I don't know if they stopped because you're now dealing with graves. We don't know how many are in there. We don't know. We know that we found at least a couple, but they don't know how many they have. All they really know is we have a number of death certificates that were done. They're not hiding the deaths. We don't have burials. And so we don't know if they're all in there. They could have been buried in unmarked graves. They could be they could be anywhere. However, when you go back to the 1970s and you've got people finding 20 skeletons and throwing that number out there like it's nothing, 20 skeletons is a lot of people to be finding skeletonized.
Lot of people.
I mean, that would give me Nightmare on Elm Street kind of nightmares for a while.
Well, if you think that's bad, the area where this place was torn down is now surrounded by modern apartment complex.
No, it isn't. Come on.
Yeah. And so you've got this kind of concentrically located in the middle right there.
When we take a hiatus from taping, you and I are going over there with a digital camera and a film crew, and we're making a scary movie. That's what we're doing.
No, I'll be going to the pub to have a pint of Guinness. You can go out there if you want to, but it's
goodness.
There's going to be multiple universities involved in this because Dave, what they're saying right now, what has happened is that the government officials have finally given the go-ahead for full-on excavation of this area.
Okay.
And Dave, to give you an idea of how vast this is, they're estimating that it will take them 2 to beyond years in order to facilitate this. So right now, as we're speaking,
they just
we're looking out toward 27 or 28 before this might be complete. And the problem is that you don't know the scope of this when you get into it. You've got these missing remains. The skeletons will, in fact, be, I think, disarticulated. So you really are going to have a commingled jumble in this area. And the one other thing that they're purposed to do here, Dave, is that they're going to do DNA. They're doing DNA on these. And, I think, of course, about our friends at Othram, because this is going to be a case that will involve forensic genetic genealogy, because there are descendants of the same family line that are out there that might not know that there was a child, that came into this world and that there was a teenage mom that was part and parcel of, of their family. And Dave, you gave me.
It gets even worse, Joe.
Yeah, please, because I got to tell you, get ready, folks.
As bad as it is to think that we've got this one place run by nuns and 796 children that are unaccounted for in their death. Thankfully, one historian opened this door.
Yeah.
But here are the other numbers that are associated with this, because this wasn't the only home run by nuns in the Republic of Ireland. I did say that right, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
A major inquiry has been done. In the time since this first came out in 2014, they've been studying, and it's been determined the mother and baby homes found in the Republic of Ireland, there were 18 total different homes run in this same time period, and a total of about 9,000 children dead. 9,000 children amongst the 18 homes. And the death certificates are there, Joe. We've got them dying from things like respiratory infections, gastroenteritis. Isn't that stomach flu?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. And a few other things like that. But 9,000 children dead over 18 other homes. And they got to figure out where the bodies are.
Yeah, and again, how do you make account for these? Do some of these homes, or at least the structure, still stand? Is there an area that had been designated previously, as a graveyard? It reminds me of the Dozier School in Florida, which was the boys' home down there. And there's been several documentaries, absolutely heartbreaking, where these young boys actually were sent to the state home. And they were, delinquent and that sort of thing. They would keep them there for years and literally treat them like slave labor and take them out into windowless building and beat them. And many of these kids died, and they were buried in unmarked graves. And there was a big push. And I think that going back in time, as we dig deeper down into records, I think that you'll find more of these events. Right now, the spotlight is on the Republic of Ireland. And you know what? What else? The spotlight is on the Catholic Church. And I would make a plea right now to the new Pope, Pope Leo, who seems receptive to things right now. I think that it would be a great start if the Catholic Church would put their full might, power, and finances into solving this mystery that is certainly a stain on the beautiful country of Ireland. Help with the DNA, help with getting these young children, buried properly. Send your priest out there, do last rites, do whatever you need to do to make it right with the community, because there's no replacing these precious little ones, none whatsoever. But there's a chance that healing could begin, and you never know in this old crazy world where that healing or what that healing will lead to. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.